right, we're going to get started here. If you can hear me, type 1. If you can't, type 2. Are you guys able to hear me? All right. So again, can you guys hear me? Just type 1 if you can hear me. I want to make sure that you guys can hear me. I didn't realize that you guys couldn't hear me before. So if you can hear me, just type 1. My apologies for the technical glitches here. I'll blame Sister Carol. I got to blame somebody. So I'll blame somebody, for the technical difficulties. So we're going to go ahead and get started again. So again, my apologies. I didn't know that there was sound issues. So again, somebody got to take the blame. So some of you guys grew up in church, and somebody got to take the blame. So the first name I see. Matter of fact, I'm going to blame Sister Carol. I'm going to blame Sister Melinda. I'm going to blame uh, Rahama. I'm going to blame all you guys. All right. Somebody got to take the blame. Also, I'm going to blame um, Moray, Ricky Stansbury. All right. But nevertheless, my apologies, guys. But we're going to go ahead and start this over. Okay. So let's jump right into it. Let's jump right into it. All right. So Judaism. That's the overall theme. But this topic for today is, what is anti-Semitism? So again, what is anti-Semitism? That's what we're going to break down today. All right. And just take notes, and I'm going to show you how to articulate anti-Semitism based off of resources. I'm going to give you a number of resources. Also, how to define the word Jew rather. Deal with that word Jew, because that is a word of confusion. And what we'll do Shabbat night, or maybe Sunday night, whether Shabbat night or Sunday night, we'll deal with the word Jew and Gentile, and I call those words words of confusion. All right. So tonight we're going to deal with anti-Semitism. I'm going to take it a step further of what I taught last weekend. And so I want to encourage those that did not see the presentation, go back and watch that presentation. It's a lot of information. So this is just a segment from that presentation, but I'm going to take it even further to really deal with Semitism. All right. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay. So imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. All right. I'll say it again. Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. This is from Charles Caleb Colton. All right. Again, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. So we're going to start off with this question of, what is Semitism? What is Semitism? And we're going to define this. All right. I want to start off with Professor Mark Hill. I want to deal with him because Professor Mark Hill was accused of anti-Semitism. So let's go to an article here. CNN fires contributor Mark Lamont Hill for criticizing Israel. And the article says, American cable news network has severed ties with Mark Lamont Hill, a recurring political contributor, after he delivered a speech at the United Nations accusing Israel of state violence and ethnic cleansing, and champion a one-state solution. So let me read that again. American cable news network, CNN, has severed ties with Mark Lamont Hill, a recurring political contributor, after he delivered a speech at the United Nations accusing Israel of state violence and ethnic cleansing, and champion a one-state solution. And so I encourage you guys to do the research on the Ethiopian Jews that returned to Israel. Do the research, and you will see some of the things that they were subjected to. Many of you guys don't know that the word Cush or Cushi is like saying the N word here. That is like saying the N word here. And I will upload some videos so you can see on video how some of our brothers and sisters over there are being treated. But nevertheless, we'll go ahead and stay within this article here. But I just want to put that out there. Do the research, and you'll see for yourself. All right, and I'm going to upload some videos that proves that. All right, but nevertheless, let me read this again. American Cable News Network, CNN, has severed ties with Mark Lamont Hill, a recurring political contributor, after he delivered a speech at the United Nations, accusing Israel of state violence and ethnic cleansing, and champion a one-state solution. A CNN spokesperson said in a brief statement on Thursday that Hill, a professor of media studies at Temple University, was no longer under contract. The network did not give a reason, but the move came amid objections to Hill's speech by the Anti-Defamation League, better known as ADL, and other groups. Hill, a recurring political commentator, a recurring political commentator on CNN, had called for a single secular democratic state for everyone in a meeting at the UN, marking the International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people on Wednesday, with a free Palestine from the river to sea. All right, that's what he said. Let me read that again. It says, he made a statement saying, free Palestine from the river to sea. And so the ADL, as you see here, the ADL said that term river to sea is a phrase code for destruction of Israel. So they accuse, all right, Professor Mark Hill, of suggesting or stating that he was calling for the destruction of Israel by saying the river to sea, saying that that was a phrase code for the destruction of Israel, adding that the annual UN event promoted divisiveness and hate. According to the Jewish Voice for Peace, right, while the ADL marks itself as a civil rights organization, its history betrays an extensive record of anti-Arab, anti-Muslim, anti-Palestinian advocacy. Now, you see what this article says, right? It says that the ADL accused this professor, Professor Mark Hill, of stating that or saying phrases or like coded phrases of the destruction of Israel. That's what the ADL said. And if you guys do the study on ADL, or go back and watch the previous video from last weekend, Judaism, and we dealt with the ADL. I explained how they came about, and you'll see a case, a case about Frank Leo. And I encourage you guys to look up Frank Leo, and you'll get a better understanding. But this is how the ADL came into being, came into existence, because of some of the things that they were doing towards the local prosecutor, some of the things that they were putting out in the media about the local prosecutor. So I encourage you to watch the previous video, and I really go over the how the ADL came into existence. All right, but you see here, it says in 1993, the United States police raided the offices of the ADL in San Francisco and found illegally obtained files on nearly 10,000 and different groups. I don't have the full article here. It's in the previous presentation, but nevertheless, they found them having hacked articles, documents on all the groups, Islam, the KKK, you name it, whatever groups that are out there, they had all the all they had illegally obtained files on every group in this country, pretty much. Basically, they hacked and got this information illegally. So there was a major investigation on this. But pay attention to this here. It says its history betrays an extensive record of anti Arab, anti Muslim, and anti Palestinian advocacy because they say that they're all about what? Standing up and speaking against and taking actions against any anti-Semitism or people that are dealing with that anti-Semitism. But we don't see that directed towards, as it says here, the Arabs, Muslims, Palestinians, and others, right? So I just wanted to just highlight that there. So again, do your research on the ADL. So the etymology of Semitism, let's get into that. All right, let me check on you guys, make sure we're good. Yeah, that's right. Ace, they had the NAACP as well. They had a number of different groups. They had a number of different groups inside their database. So you're absolutely correct on that. All right, so let's go ahead and move forward. So the etymology dictionary definition of Semitism, let's deal with this. It says, denoting the language group that includes Hebrew, Arabic, Aramaic, Assyrian. I'll say it again. It says, according to 1797, it says, denoting the language group that includes Hebrew, Arabic, Aramaic, Assyrian. It goes on to say, it says, noun as the name of a linguistic family. So, that term Semitic was the name of a linguistic family, right? But then we're going to go a little deeper with this. I'll further explain this. It goes on to say, in non-linguistic use, perhaps directly from German Semitic, in recent use, often with the specific sense Jewish, but not historically so limited. So what this is saying here, that in recent usage of the word Semitic, it's been now used interchangeably with Jew or Jewish. That's what it's saying here. In recent use, often with the specific sense Jewish. In other words, it's being used interchangeably with the word Jewish. Now we take it a step further. That word Jewish now is being used interchangeably for all of Israel. That word Jew, that word Jewish, now is being used interchangeably for all of Israel. And that began in the 16th century. That's why I target and I labeled this word Jew as a word of confusion, because this word Jew is a transliteration of a transliteration of a transliteration, right? It initially was directed at Judah, the nation, Judah, the son, and Judah, the tribe. But now it's being used interchangeably with all of Israel. And that's where the confusion come in. And we'll deal with that a little later. All right. But again, in recent use, often with the specific sense Jewish, but not historically so limited. So I want to say that again. In recent use, often with the specific sense Jewish, but not historically so limited. So what is anti-Semitism? What is anti-Semitism? All right, so let's deal with this. So anti-Semitism, this is coming from the Britannica, Encyclopedia Britannica. It says, hostility toward a discrimination against Jews as a religious or racial group. The term anti-Semitism was coined in 1879 by the German agitator Wilhelm Marr to designate the anti-Jewish campaigns underway in Central Europe at that time. All right, you see what it says? It was coined, a term coined in 1879, but it goes on to say, although the term now has wide currency, it is a misnomer. Simply, it implies a discrimination against all Semites Arabs and other peoples are also Semites, and yet they are not the target of anti-Semitism as it is usually understood. The term is especially inappropriate as a label for the anti-Jewish prejudices, statements, or actions of Arabs or other Semites. Nazi anti Semitism, which it goes on to say, culminated in the Holocaust, had a racial dimension in that it targeted Jews because of their supposed biological characteristics. Now, pay attention to that right there. It said had a racist dimension in that it had targeted Jews because of their supposed biological characteristics. Because when we think about that word Semitic, we automatically use that again interchangeably with the Jewish community. All right. But here it says because of their what? Supposed biological characteristics, even those who had themselves converted to other religions or whose parents were converts. So they're saying that even the converts, right, can come from different ethnic groups and still be called uh, Semitic. All right. So that's why I'm saying this again. It says because of their supposed biological characteristics. All right. So again, targeted Jews because of their supposed biological characteristics. Right. So let's deal with the definition of supposedly, just so we get an understanding of it. All right. Let's go to Cambridge online dictionary. It says this: according to what someone told you, or according to what is believed by many people to be true. See, that's part of the problem because we've been systematically institutionalized to automatically, when we think of Semitic and coming up in the church, coming up in the areas that we grew up in, let's be real, we were taught that Semitic is interchangeable with the Jewish community. And then in the church, we were taught the word Jew, not even thinking about it, is interchangeable with Israel. All right. So again, according to what someone told you, or according to what is believed by many people to be true. So let's delve deeper into this. Let's not stop with anti-Semitic. Let's go further with this. Let's deal with the definition of Semitic. Let's deal with the definition of Semitic. Let's see what it says. It says, relating or denoting a family of languages that includes Hebrew, Arabic, Aramaic, and certain ancient languages such as Phoenician and Akkadian, constituting the main subgroup of the what? Afro-Asiatic family. Afro, that's African, right? But then Max Kellerman had the audacity to say basically that the Negroes in here in America, Negroes in America, we cannot be Semitic. He says that that is low quality information. He said that is mysticism. We should be in an uproar. We should be complaining. We should be taking a stand to have him on the hot seat, to have him pull up the definition of what this word means. Why is it that anytime we deal with these words, when it comes to our people, we can't be anything but what they tell us what we are? That's the issue right there. We cannot be anything but what they tell us we are. No, no, the Negroes here in America. No, they cannot be. Nowhere in the world are they descendants of Israel. No, they can't be Israelites. No, they can't be Semitic. No, they can't be this. They can't. They even have doctrine saying that the Negroes. Even they exclude us from everyone. They exclude us here in America, the United States of America. We're excluded from everything. That's how lowly we are looked upon. That's why I say we're not dealing with a color issue. We're dealing with a culture issue. All right. Of how our community is viewed in this country. It's a culture issue. But let's deal with this some more. So again, relating to or denoting a family of languages that includes Hebrew, Arabic, Aramaic, and certain ancient languages such as Phoenician, Akkadian, constituting the main subgroup of the Afro-Asiatic family. And I challenge anyone, do the research. You'll see each one of these groups that's highlighted here are dark melanated people. All right. So let's deal with the definition of Semitic. Let's see what it says here for from the Merriam-Webster dictionary. Let's go further here. Now, notice here, you see three entries, right? This tells you like entry number one is the oldest entry, right? That's the original entry. Entry number two, of course, came later. Then look at what you see at the bottom there. Number one, the first entry of relating to or constituting a subfamily of the Afro-Asiatic language family that includes Hebrew, Aramaic, Arabic, Amharic, and that's when you're dealing with Ge'ez and you dealing with the dealing with the Sabine language, right? So and that's what you start dealing with the Ethiopians. Okay, so Hebrew, Aramaic, Arabic, Amharic. Then entry number two of relating to characteristics of Semites. Then lastly, you see Jewish, which tells you that is a recent addition as we confirmed with the etymology dictionary definition of this word. All right, so let's take it a step further. Let's take it a step further. Since we dealt with Semitic, right, let's deal with the word Semite. Because if we see this word, let's go back here. If we see Jew under Semitic, let's see if they're listed under Semite. See, one thing I love about how the Most High does things, guess what? It's hard to cover up lies. When you have all this truth around, it's hard to cover up lies because what happens is there's going to be something that's going to raise a red flag. So let's go to Semitic or Semite. Let's see what Semite means. It says a member of any of a number of peoples of ancient southwestern Asia, including the Akkadians, Phoenicians, Hebrews, and Arabs. Now, understand it when it says ancient southwestern. This is what we have to understand when we start understanding the Middle East. That's the area that we're really targeting. That Middle East territory was actually originally Africa, was an extension of Africa. But in the 18th century or the 19th century is where they created the Suez Canal to try to separate that portion of the world, that portion of Africa from the main land. And they labeled it Middle East, which is actually Northeast Africa. It sits on the same tectonic plate of the mainland. And so when you understand at one time, it was called Ethiopia. It was called Kush. It was called, because whatever was the dominant kingdom, that's what the entire territory was called. But nevertheless, you see here, it says a member of any of a number of peoples of ancient Southwest Asia, which really is the Middle East, including Akkadians, Phoenicians, Hebrews, and Arabic. So that's supposed to be Middle East, but actually we're dealing with Northeast Africa. All right, let's take it further. In the sub entry, right, it says a descendant of these people. So when you say Semite, right, you're saying descendant of these people right here, Akkadians, Phoenicians, Hebrews, Arabs rather. But when you look up under Semitic, you see Jews there, but you don't see them listed here. Why is that? We got to ask that question. Why is that? All right, let's take it a step further. Right, it goes on to say a descendant of these people. So Semite, a descendant of what people? These people right here, of course, there's others, but that's part of the descendants of Shem. But Akkadians, Phoenicians, Hebrews, Arabs. All right, and we're dealing with what is called the Northeast Africa, which now is known as the Middle East. Okay, let's take it a step further. So was Christ an Arab, or did he have Arab skin complexion? Because this is some of the things that we hear about, and I encourage you guys to go back over the presentation I did called "Anything But the Negroes," and that's where we get the comments about, well, Christ had olive skin. right? When we understand the word olive and you do the Oxford Dictionary definition of it, it's going to give you two colors. It's going to say green, unripe, blue, black, right? Or brownish black, dark, really dark color for um, an olive that is what? Ripe. But nevertheless, I put this here for a reason because I want to give you some history so that way we can understand even the Arabs that we see today, the history of, that territory. When we say Arab, we're not even talking about the original Arabs in the territory. All right. And I want to put this up here, especially when we start um, dealing with um, Egypt, because the Egyptians that we see today are not the original Egyptians. All right. But let me show you this here. This is coming from Outlines of Ancient Egyptian History. And this is a great piece of information. This is 1892. You could, I encourage you guys take a note of this, use this as your notes to further prove that when we start dealing with that region, what we see today is not the original people. All right. Because many of the people were forced further into Africa. Many of them fled, just like when we start dealing with the diaspora, many fled deeper into Africa. Right. But this is what it says. How often do we see in Eastern monarchies and even in European states a different of origin between the ruling class? All right. Let me see here. Let me make sure can you guys still hear me? I want to make sure. All right. Just hit one if you can hear me because I want to make sure you guys can still hear me clearly. All right. Okay. Before I start continue, if just type one inside your in the comment section because I want to make sure I don't go out here. All right, cool. I just wanted to make sure I didn't go out and that I'm losing you guys. So again, let me start over again. So how often do we see in Eastern monarchies and even in European states a difference of origin between the ruling class to which the royal family belongs and the mass of the people? We need to leave Western Asia and Egypt. We find there Turks ruling over nations. It says here again, we need not leave, Western Asia and Egypt. We find there Turks ruling over nations to the race of which they do not belong. All right. It goes on to say, although they have adopted their religion, notice what it says, although they have adopted their religion in the same way as the Turks of Baghdad, who are Finns, now reign over Semites, Turanian kings may have led into Egypt and governed a population of mixed origin where the Semitic elements was prevalent. If we consider the mixing up of races which took place in Mesopotamia in remote ages, the invasion which the country had to suffer, the repeated conflicts of which it was the theater, there is nothing extraordinary that the populations coming out of this land should have presented a variety of races and origins. So, what it's telling us that what you see today, when you see the people that are representing these territories, they are not the original people. They're saying that they are what? Of Turkish origin. That's important. Okay, so let's go to another reference. The Journal of Cambridge Archaeological Association. Let's see what it says. All right. And it's going to confirm it. It says Mr. Baldwin draws a marked distinction between the modern Mohammedan Semitic population of Arabia and their great Cushite, Hamite, or Ethiopian predecessors. The former says are comparatively modern in Arabia. Let me say that again. It says the former, he says, are comparatively modern in Arabia. They have appropriated the reputation of the old race and have unduly occupied the chief attention of modern scholars. So you see that again. It's saying that the people that you see today in those territories, they have taken basically a heritage, an identity, a history that did not originally belong to them. All right, that's what it's saying. That's why I'm giving you references here. So it says appropriated the reputation of the old race. So when we start dealing with the Egyptians, that basically this is a an educated, or should I say, an academic way of saying stolen identity, whitewashing. All right. So Max Kellerman says Negro Semites is basically on say basically saying that it is based on mysticism and low quality information. That's what Max Kellerman says, that Negro Semites is based on mysticism and low quality information. Is Max Kellerman correct? Is he correct? Absolutely not. So let me share with you some information here, and I'm going to post the full interview that my cousin, Pastor William Brown, who did an interview with Tudor Parfit. And this guy, I mean, he sent all across Africa, but primarily he was assigned to research and really confirm whether or not the Limbas are descendants of Israel. So this is coming out of his book. And I encourage you guys to purchase this book. You got several books out there that is powerful. And I'm not going to make a lot of references to it tonight, but I'm just going to give you one key reference, but I'm going to upload the video this weekend. It says, Harvard University Press, Black Jews in Africa and the Americas, Tudor Parfit. All right, let's see what he says. He says in his book, this is just a bullet coming out of this book. He says, the ensuing paper, which analyzed 399 Y chromosomes in 6 populations, including Limba, Bantu, right? He said, and Ashkenazi and Sephardi Jews, discovered that Limba Y chromosomes were divided into Semitic and Bantu clades, and that one of the Limbas subclans of the Buba, which traditionally contained the Limba priesthood. Now, notice what it's saying here. Now, they said they did what? Analyzed 399 Y chromosomes in 6 populations. All right, so let's see what it says here. It says, to our surprise, carried the CMH at a high frequency. The new genetic evidence seems to take the conclusion of Jenkins a little further, as now there appear to be a precise connection not only between the Limba and Southern Arabia, which given the close historical ties, because the east coast of Africa and South Arabia, it goes on to say, was not altogether surprisingly, but more specifically with ancient Jewish populations. Once again, the genetic findings seem to be consistent not only with some of the oral traditions of the Limbas, right? Not just the oral traditions, but also with the way in which the Limba had been constructed by outsiders. In other words, when they began to piece together what is called the Bantu expansion, right? When they started doing the historical calculations, when they start mapping everything out to confirm the Limbas of being who they are, right? It goes on to say a recent genome-wide, as yet unpublished analysis of the Limba data suggests that some Limba, in fact, arrived not from a South Arabian group, which is what was previously thought, but from a Levantine East Mediterranean population. As a result of these and other studies, it is now widely believed that the Limba are of Jewish origin and that this has a scientific basis. Wait a minute. Y'all see what I just read here, right? I just proved to you, right? They proved that the Limbas, I'm just dealing with the Limbas. I could deal with more, but just for the sake of the presentation, we're just going to deal with the Limbas for now. We just proved that they have confirmed that the Limbas are descendants, are related, are the ancient Israelites. It says Limba are of Jewish origin, and that this has a scientific basis. Now, since I brought that up, right, let me give you one of my DNA results, because I did a few of them. But let me give you my DNA result, right? Notice what you see at number one. I just highlighted the Limba and the Bantu and the Jews of Ethiopia, but guess what? We know that Yoruba, we could prove them. Mandinka, we could really prove them as well. But I just want to highlight these three here, right? Just these three alone. It said it has Limba number one, Bantu, which is still the same, right? Number one, number two, and then number eight, we see Ethiopian Jew. We see number seven Jew, but Ethiopian Jew. We can match all of this up. So what does this say? What does this say? So this is telling you that I am what? If I am Semitic, that means guess what? I can guarantee you that you guys that are watching this here, you are Semitic as well. So technically, when we're dealing with, for example, the church people that are bashing us for who we are, technically they are anti-Semitic. Is that correct? Max Kellerman, right? Anti-Semitic. What's sad is because we are scared. When I say we, our people have been scared into thinking or stepping outside the box of what we've been taught. My old pastor, when I was in Kojic, he said, if the pain of change, right? What did he say? He said, if the pain of change is greater than remaining the same, people would rather remain the same. I'll say that again. If the pain of change is greater than remaining the same, people will rather remain the same. Okay. So I just wanted to put that out there. So guess what? I am Semitic, or if we want to take it a different term, Shemitic. I am a descendant of Shem. I am a descendant of Eber. I am a descendant of Abraham. I am a descendant of Isaac. I am a descendant of Jacob. Right. And then if they want to go further with this, according to their formula here, they're also saying that guess what? Limbas and the Limbas already say that they are what? The priests. This is saying that I am a descendant of the Levites, that I am descendant of Moses. I am descendant of Aaron. So I just proved just that alone. So if I wanted to, if you wanted to, that's why we have to start learning how to what? Use this system against itself. Right? So Bantu, I'm Bantu Limba. Now, Bantu Limba, I am Semitic. I am Semitic. That's why I would make it clear. That's why if I had to have a discussion with any of these urban apologists or any one of those guys, I will bring this to the table. That's why they don't want to have a face-to-face conversation. That's why a lot of these groups, they want to duck and hide behind videos, but they don't want to come and have discussions and really show the people who we truly are. Why? Because many of them are on the payroll. Many of them are scared to lose their benefit, their connection, basically. I won't even say benefits, their connection. So guess what? We're royal people here. Now, let's see how this is going to come up. Let's see how this is going to come up on the Richter scale. All right. Let's go further here. Okay. Does the judicial system recognize the Jewish community as a race? We're going to go further here because I just proved who I am. Right. And guess what? You guys that are watching, I'm pretty confident you do your DNA test. Guess what? We all are part of one big family. We're one big family here, family. Anything but the Negro. Anything but the Negro. We're the ones that's constantly being hindered. We're the ones that's being mocked. Fulfilling the scriptures. Fulfilling the scriptures. All right, let's go deeper here. We're not going to stop here. I'm going to show you the judicial system, the court system, what they say about the Jews that are in this country. Let's see what they say here. All right. So again, I want to start with this term here. The former, he says, are comparatively modern in Arabia. I want to make sure that you understand. I'm reiterating that point. They have appropriated the reputation of the old race. All right. Just want to reiterate that. So again, what is anti-Semitism? What is anti-Semitism? Let's look at this quote here. It says, the Jews, I find, are very, very selfish. They care not how many get murdered or mistreated, as long as the Jews get special treatment. Now, according to standards, according to where we are today, this is considered a anti-Semitic comment right here, right? The ADL would go crazy if any one of us, if a celebrity right now pointed this out publicly, they will be rake through the coals and try to and forced to what apologize and then say, "Hey, we're going to take you to Israel. We're going to take you to some of our teachers, so that way they can indoctrinate you, so you can learn exactly how to articulate yourself when it comes to this stuff." Right? You see what we have to go through? We say that we're Hebrew Israelites. We say that we're descendants of Israel, but now that's anti-Semitic. We're saying that we're the people of the book, but now we're viewed as a cult. We're viewed as evil. The same people in church that says, "Hey, we're Christ love everybody. We're supposed to love our enemies," but don't find out that your own brothers and sisters are actually blood descendants of Israel, then you hate them. I mean, it's unbelievable with the mockery that I'm seeing coming even within the church. And they say they got Christ, they love Jesus, they got the Holy Spirit, and they raking Nick Cannon over through the mud. They raking us through the mud. They mocking us. So basically, anti-self, right? Let's deal with this some more. So according to the evolving definition of anti-Semitism, President Harry Truman would be considered anti-Semitic. You know why? Because that came from Harry Truman. That phrase I just posted. This is what he goes on to say. Yet when the Jews, right? Well, actually, he said, yet they, I put Jews there so that way you understand who they're referring to. Yet when they, in other words, the Jews have power, physical, financial, or political, it says neither Hitler nor Stalin has anything on them for cruelty. This is Harry Truman making the comments about the Jewish community. This is coming from his diary, 1967. You can look this up. The link is listed here as well. This is what he says. The Jews, I find, are very, very selfish. They care not how many Estonians, Latvians, Finns, Poles, Yugoslavs, or Greeks get murdered or mistreated as displaced persons, as long as the Jews get special treatment. I'll read it again. The Jews, I find, are very, very selfish. They care not how many Estonians, Latvians, Finns, Poles, Yugoslavs, or Greeks get murdered or mistreated as displaced persons, as long as the Jews get special treatment. He didn't stop there. He said this: yet when they have power, physical, financial, or political, neither Hitler nor Stalin has anything on them for cruelty or mistreatment. It says, or mistreatment to the underdog. Put the underdog on top, and it makes no difference whether his name is Russian, Jewish, and it goes on to name other groups. But you see here, right now, technically, right, he should be labeled anti-Semitic. But why you don't hear the Jews going after him? Why don't you hear the ADL going after him? And we're going to deal with that to show why the ADL don't mess with Truman. Why? And I'm going to show you in this presentation. All right. So let's deal with the modern day Jew. This is some of the images that we see today. Right. This is what we see today. These are the different depictions of what the Jewish community is today. Right. But yet, we've been raped, right, by every country, right, around the world, basically. We've been kidnapped and all of those things. You name it. We had everything committed to our people. But yet, for the most part, we maintained who we are. We maintained our appearance. We maintained who we are. You don't see these type of variations among our community, these extreme variations. So the question is, how is it possible for all of these groups look completely different? And I'm not just basing it on looks, but we have to be real here. All of them look like they have no relationship to one another, but yet but yet at the same time be the same. Well, let's answer this question. All right. How can they all be Jews and yet they are completely different? I wanted to turn your attention to what is called genetic distances, right? This was one of the formulas that was used to explain the disparity that you see. This is one of the things that they use to try to explain to us why you see such, huge gaps between communities, right? So I want to deal with genetic distances. All right. So again, this is a great book that you see here, Origin of Ashkenazi Jewry. I encourage you guys to purchase this book. Great, it's a great book. All right. But this is some quotes from it. It says, a large part of the study was devoted to the determination of genetic distances between the different populations. Through this method, through this method, genetic markers from different Jewish populations are compared. The smaller the relationship, the more differences in DNA may have arisen. Such differences are called distances. All right. So in this test, right, and this is where you see the flaws in the test, because one of the things that stands out in this book, the test that they put together, that they created, did not include us in the test. Right. So notice who they choose. It says 75 Caucasians, in other words, white population based on non-markers. It goes on to say the genetic distances analysts showed that East European Jews were closest to the inhabitants of Thrace, the region shared by Bulgaria, Greece, and Turkey. It goes on to say Bulgarian Jews came next, followed by 36 non Jewish populations. And only then the second Jewish population, which you see is the Iranian Jews. Other results showed a large Italian component in the gene pool. All right. In other words, total variety of genes in a population of the Eastern European Jews. From all these results, it appears, and I want to point out Iranian Jews because that's significant. Because when we think about the Iranian people, what territory are they in? They are in what they labeled today as the Middle East, which is actually Northeast Africa. So, why is this important? Make a note of this group right here, and I'll show you why it's important. So, it goes on to say, from all these results, it appears genetically, the different Jewish communities do not have much in common. Let me say that again. It says here with this formula, genetic differences, that the different communities do not have much in common. Often they appear to be more related to the population in the midst of which they live when its genetic material was available. So they're saying that these groups that I pointed out, they have nothing in common whatsoever. Whatsoever. So the question is, what is a Jew? What is a Jew? How do we define it? This is coming from the law of return, right? And you could look this up. Israel Ministry of Foreign Affairs. This is what it says. For the purpose of this law, Jew means a person who was born of a Jewish mother or has become converted to Judaism and who is not a member of another religion. So you can be labeled as a Jew being converted to Judaism by denouncing your belief system, embracing Judaism, so you can technically become a Jew just by what? Practicing Judaism or being born to a Jewish mother. All right. So I want to reiterate this point. A person who was born of a Jewish mother or has become converted to Judaism. So let's deal with the online etymology dictionary definition of the word Jew. Let's see what it says. It says one of the Jewish race or religion. All right. I'll say it again. One of the Jewish race or religion. Now, if you see that, that should raise a little, an eyebrow there. Why? Because it says that the Jewish community is a race, but it says one of the Jewish race or religion. So it's saying that they could be multiple races. All right. But when did the Jewish community become a race? Okay. Word of confusion. So again, one of the race or religion. We're going to deal with this. So what is a Jew? What is the term Jew? What does it mean? Let's go to another um, genetic formula that they put together to try to explain the differences. Right? They came up with this term, random genetic drift. All right. Let me explain this. It says the explanation without foreign genesis on genes is based on the assumption. Let me read that again. Explanation without foreign genes is based on the assumption that originally that there was one Jewish population from which small groups voluntarily or forcibly left for other countries. The original population had a specific gene pool and the genetic differences between the different groups of Jews, it goes on to say, must have come about during the 2,000 years of dispersion through a genetic mechanism that is often called random genetic drift. All right. So, this is how the formula works. This is how the mechanics works. It works this way. So, a few individuals with the parental population possess, let's just say gene A, right? So a few individuals have what is called gene A, which is going to call it label it A. A few people from the total population go to another country. After a certain time, it appears that their descendants possess gene A, right? Since no other genes entered the population from outside, gene A must have accidentally been present in those few people. Let me read that again. So a few individuals within the parental, right? The parent population possess gene A. A few people from the total population go to another country, right? Right? Saying that others that, from this population that may or may not have this gene, but it goes on to say they go to another country, and after a certain time, it appears that their descendants possess this gene. So even though they may not have it, some of those in the population that go to another area, but later on down the road, they see that their descendants possess it. So it goes on to say, since no other genes entered the population from outside, gene A must have accidentally been present in those few people. All right, let's go further. So next, the gene spread among the descendants of the little group until it becomes fixed, which means that every member of the population possess the gene. So the question now to be asked is, how long does it take before a gene becomes fixed? That's the question. How long does it take for a gene to become fixed? Right? So the most important factor for this to happen is the size of the original population. The few people that the few people that left the country. So in other words, this is the formula. You have 4 times the initial number, right? Actually, time in years equal 4 times the initial number, right? Of X, times the duration of one generation. Let me say it again. Time in years equals 4 times the initial number times the duration of one generation in years. All right. So what does that mean? If the small group consisted of, say, 50 people, if we take the duration of a generation to be 25 years, this means that it would take 4 times 50 times 25 equal 5,000 years before everybody carries the gene. Since the Jews were supposedly, as we are taught, right, the Jews as we know them today, since the Jews as we know it were carried off by Romans in 70 AD, right, it is clear that there has not been enough time for this mechanism to operate. So guess what? Even with that formula, it says they still have another 2,000 years. It says that they still have what? Another 2,000 years. Okay. So let's take it a step further. What is a Jew? What is a Jew? Let's go to another dictionary here. Let's go to the Bernhardt Etymology Dictionary definition. And this is what it says. I have a physical copy. This is coming from my physical copy. So what you see on your screen is me taking a screen print of the page inside my dictionary here. So let's see what it says about the word Jew. It says here, borrowed through Anglo-French. But then it goes down, and when you see at the bottom, you see Judah, name of the 4th son of Jacob. But the key is, you're not seeing a key thing here. You're not seeing the word uh, let me go back here. You're not seeing race. You're not seeing the phrase race in this etymology dictionary. That's why we have to be careful being so dependent on what's online and start making sure that we have physical dictionaries that we can what do a comparison with. All right. So when did the word Jew become associated with ancient Israel? That's another question. So we already see that online. You see some manipulations of the definition because we see Jew online. The etymology dictionary says that Jews are a race. All right. So now we have to deal with another term here, another question. When did the word Jew become associated with ancient Israel? When did it become associated with them? Because this is coming from their book, the Jewish Almanac. And I'm telling you guys, you get this book, it's so much information in here. A brief history of the term for Jews, a brief history of the term for Jews. Page 3. This is what it says. You guys know this because I reiterate this. It says, strictly speaking, it is incorrect to call an ancient Israelite a Jew or to call a contemporary Jew an Israelite or a Hebrew. Let me say that again. Strictly speaking, it is incorrect to call an ancient Israelite a Jew or to call a contemporary Jew an Israelite or a Hebrew. The first Hebrews may not have been Jews at all. And contemporary Palestinians, that goes on to say the same thing about what you see today versus those that was originally in the territory. So it says here in their own literature, let me put it up here, the Jewish Almanac, 1980. I didn't write it. None of you guys wrote it, right? This is coming from within their own community, right? 1980, page 3 says that it is incorrect to take that term Jew and use it interchangeably with ancient Israel or use it with Israelite or a Hebrew. That's why you see this special entry when you see Jew in the sub entry, right? Entry number 3 of Semitic. That's why you do not see them within the other two previous definitions. You see that entry added separately. Okay, so when did the Jewish race become, the Jewish community become a race? When did the Jewish community become a race? All right, but we keep grabbing hold of this. We so programmed that we do their dirty work for them. Matter of fact, I'm not even going to use the term dirty work. Let me say we do their work for them because I don't want to throw name calling or nothing like that. I want to keep this strictly all about academia, showing information here. I want to keep this clean so no one could try to say that we're name calling and all kinds of things because guess what? That's what many people are looking for us to what call names so that way they can focus on, hey, he called someone a name and not on the information that's being shared. So I apologize to anyone for me using that term. Okay. But nevertheless, let's keep it clean. I'm going to keep it clean. Let's keep it clean in the chat so that way we be the reflection of what the scripture says we are to be. We are a holy priesthood, a royal priesthood. So let's be the example. So let's make sure we're not cursing inside the chats or anything like that. Let's make sure that we're being respectful because people are watching and they're going to look for anything that they can to undo what we're doing. All right. So I apologize if I said anything that suggests that I'm calling someone names. All right. But nevertheless, so I take that term back, dirty work. But but what I mean is, we're basically doing the work for them, because we're defending them because we don't know. So we're adamantly defending them. They don't have to defend themselves. They have it in their literature not to call them Hebrew, not to call them Israelites. But we've been programmed by saying, hey, with Abraham, what was said to Abraham, guess we're going to bless those that bless you and curse those that curse you. And that's what we were programmed in the church. All right. So what is the New World Order? We're going to deal with this real quick and we're going to deal with going to some more legalities here. What is the New World Order? Guys, we have to stop, taking on poor teaching. We keep saying that we are waiting for a New World Order. Guys, the New World Order has been here full steam. If you understand the Hebrew language, right? The word new and renew is the same word. Karash is the same word. It means to rebuild. It means to restore. It means to repair. It means to make anew. So we're not dealing with a new order, arak, right? That's the Hebrew word for order or manner or path. We're not dealing with something new. It's a system that's being refreshed. The Roman caste system, we could take it even further back, but I'm not going to go into all of that. So let's deal with this institution. Let's deal with this order that's been refreshed, this caste system, this Roman caste system that has been refreshed. And it's called race, the institution of race. All right. This is coming from PBS, the power of an illusion. This is written by R.G. Smedley for Anthropology Newsletters, November 1997. And I encourage you guys to take a look at it, Google it, and you'll see this information. Contemporary scholars agree that race was a recent invention and that it was essentially a folk idea, not a product of scientific research and discovery. Let me say that again. Contemporary scholars agree that race was a recent invention and that it was essentially a folk idea, not a product of scientific research and discovery. This is not new to anthropologists. All right. So they know that this system is a joke. The term race, which had been a classificatory term like type or kind, but with what? Ambiguous meaning, ambiguous, vague, general, generic meaning, became more widely used in the 18th century and crystallized into a distinct reference for Africans. It goes on to say, by focusing on the physical and status differences between the conquered and enslaved. Guys, make a note of this. It says here, by focusing on the physical and status differences between the conquered and enslaved peoples and the Europeans. So the institution of race was developed to make sure that there's going to always be a gap, again, between the conquered and enslaved and what? The European people, the Europeans. So the conquered and enslaved is identified when you read the entire article. It's referring to the Negroes and the Native Americans, right? And of course, the Europeans. That refers to what? Us as being what? The inferior, right? And they are being what? The superior. We are the conquered and enslaved, and they are what? The conquerors. To always what? Keep that gap between. So that means that every governmental system, not just this country, but around the world, is built off of this system. So guess what? We are going to always see the short end of the stick, no matter where we are, whether you're in Spain, whether you are in the UK, whether you're in China, any system that is country that is using this institution, you're going to always see what? A tier, right? You're going to see a class. You're going to see what? Going back to the caste system. So it goes on to say the emerging ideology linked the socio-political status and physical traits together and created a new form of social identity. Notice what it says, created a new form of social identity. This is just a glorified term of saying heritage. That's all it's saying, a new heritage, a new heritage for the entire world. So with our community, now we are focused on just walking around with saying that we are Black, right? That's just a color descriptor. But it doesn't tell you where you're from. It doesn't tell you what tribe you descended from, what nation, what territory. It doesn't deal with any of that. But Genesis chapter 2 makes it clear that every person, starting with Noah's sons, all three sons were given what? Property, right? And their language began to evolve, right? So they had their own language, their own family, and they had their own territories. And those three pillars is what comes together to form a nation. And those objects is what comes together and what? Form what is called heritage. So the reason why we can't call each other a nation is because we don't have, for the most part, as a people, territory. We don't have our language was stripped from us. And even our families are all over the place right now. We can't even come together to be a family. We keep fighting each other. Even right now, some of our brothers and sisters that is in the church keep fighting each other. All right. Keep fighting each other. We can't come together. We have to come together, guys. We have to come together. All right. So let's move forward here. So does the judicial system recognize the Jewish community as a race? We can ready deal with that. Let me see here real quick. Do I see any questions here? Yeah, that's right. Absolutely correct. Let me put a comment up here by let me put it up here by Dawid Ben Israel. That's right. Johann Friedrich Ben Blumenbach is the one that created this institution. All right. So appreciate your comment. All right. So you're absolutely correct with that. All right. So let's move forward here. All right. I know I'm sharing a lot of information, but I want to keep it simple here. So, does the judicial system recognize the Jewish community as a race? Let's deal with this. I'm telling you, absolutely not. Regardless of what Donald Trump had pointed out a year ago, we're trying to recognize the Jewish community as a race, but we're dealing with the judicial system. I'm going to show you what the judicial system says. All right. So I want to take you to this article here. And again, I'm not downplaying the shootings of what happened to the Jewish community as we know them. I'm not trying to downplay this situation here because I don't condone um, situations like this. So I want to make it clear that I'm not here to mock anyone because death is death. A senseless death is a senseless death. So I just want to be clear. So, but I want to highlight this because I'm highlighting this for a reason, not to try to be insensitive to what happened to any particular community, but I need to show this as an example of where I'm going at with this. So 11 killed in synagogue massacre. Let's see what it says. Let's go to this article, New York Times. And you guys probably remember this, um, October 2018 when this situation happened. All right. So 11 killed in synagogue massacre, suspect charged with 29 counts. So in a rampage described as among the deadliest against the Jewish community in the United States, the assailant stormed into the Tree of Life congregation and where worshipers had gathered in separate rooms to celebrate their faith and shot indiscriminately into the crowd, shattering what had otherwise been a peaceful. Let me read that again. In a rampage described as among the deadliest against the Jewish community in the United States, the assailant stormed into the Tree of Life congregation, where worshipers had gathered in separate rooms to celebrate their faith and shot indiscriminately into the crowd, shattering what had otherwise been a peaceful morning. The assailant, identified by law enforcement officials as Robert D. Bowers, fired for several minutes and was leaving the synagogue when officers dressed in tactical gear and armed with rifles met him at the door. According to the police, right? So it goes on to give more information on this. So I want to explain to you why I'm bringing this up. Why am I bringing this up? I want to tell you why. I want you to understand hate crimes. All right. So I want to take you to the charges that was actually charged to this perpetrator. Right. Hate crimes filed in Pittsburgh synagogue shooting. I want you to pay attention to the hate to what was charged here. All right. This is coming from CNN. It says federal prosecutor have filed hate crime charges against a Pennsylvania man they said stormed a Pittsburgh synagogue and opened fire, killing 11 people. Robert Bowers, 46 years old, of suburban Baldwin, surrendered to authorities after Saturday morning shooting at the Tree of Life synagogue. He made anti-Semitic statements during the shooting and targeted Jews on social media, according to a federal law enforcement official. All right. So what are the charges? No, they did not list the charges there. So I went to the actual Pennsylvania government website to get the charges. So let me show you what the charges is. And this is important. Again, this is not trying to be insensitive to the Jewish community. I want to make that clear. But I want to show you this to show a point to you. All right. So this is Western District of Pennsylvania. Here's the charges. Specifically, the indictment charges. It says 11 counts of obstruction of free exercise of religious beliefs, resulting in death. 11 counts of use of and discharge of a firearm to commit murder during and in relation to a crime of violence, 2 counts of obstruction of free exercise of free religious belief. Let's go further. Involving an attempt to kill and use of a dangerous weapon and resulting in bodily injury. 11 counts of use and discharge of a firearm during and in relation to a crime of violence. 8 counts of obstruction of free exercise of religious beliefs. Let's go further. Involving an attempt to kill and use a dangerous weapon, and resulting in bodily injury to a public safety officer, and 1 count of obstruction of free exercise of religious beliefs involving use of a dangerous weapon and resulting in bodily injury to a public safety officer. So, did you guys notice any charges missing? All right. Did you guys notice any charges missing? There's, I want to ask that question. If you guys notice any charges missing, just if you want, just type it inside the comment section. And I'm going somewhere with this. And this is not trying to be insensitive, but I'm showing you to show you a point here. All right. If you want, just go ahead and type in what charges you think is missing. All right. But we're going to deal with, I'm going to answer the question anyway. All right. But for the sake of time, I'm just going to go ahead and answer it. Right. Hate crimes, charges against race. Let me say that again. Hate crimes, charges against race. All the charges that I listed, you did not see hate crimes, charges against race. That's the key right there. Hate crime charges against race. All right. Now let me show you some here. You didn't see hate crime charges against what? Ethnicity. Right? You didn't see hate crimes against ethnicity. All right. So what are the hate crime laws? Let me break that down real quick. And then I'm going to show you some more information as we get ready to wrap up. All right. This is coming from justice.gov. These are the hate crime laws, United States Department of Justice. All right. Since 1968, when Congress passed and President Lyndon B. Johnson signed into law, the first federal hate crime statute, the Department of Justice has been enforcing federal hate crime laws. The 1968 statute made it a crime to use or threaten to use force to willfully interfere with any person because of race, color, religion, or national origin, and because the person is participating in a federally protected activity such as public education, employment, jury service, travel, or the enjoyment of public accommodations, or helping another person to do so. In 1968, Congress also made it a crime to use or threaten to use or force to interfere with housing rights because of the victim's race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. Because this is one of the things that was happening big time in the 50s, the 60s. They would not sell homes to our ancestors, our family, our people, right? In certain areas, they want to keep us in a certain community. All right. But nevertheless, threatened to use force to interfere with housing rights because of the victim's race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. In 1988, protections on the basis of familial status and disabilities were added. In 1996, Congress passed the Church Arson Prevention Act, right? And we see it here, is giving you the statute here. Under this act, it is a crime to deface, damage, or destroy religious property or interfere with a person's religious practice in situations affecting interstate commerce. The act also bars defacing, damaging, or destroying religious property because of the race, color, or ethnicity of persons associated with the property. Okay, so in 2009, the hate crime laws were expanded. Let's see what it was expanded to. It says here Congress passed and President Obama signed the Matthew Shepard and James Byrd Jr. Hate Crimes Prevention Act, expanding the federal definition of hate crimes, enhancing the legal toolkit available to prosecutors, and increasing the ability of federal law enforcement to support our state and local partners. It goes on to say this law removed then existing jurisdictional obstacles to prosecutions of certain race and religion motivated violence and added new federal protections against crimes based on gender, disability, gender identity, sexual orientation. So we see it was modified what to protect those that are disabled, but also as we see sexual preference here. Okay, so I said all of that to say to set you up with this Supreme Court reading here. I want to go further here because that's why I'm going to show you why you did not see charges against race or ethnicity in the shooting in Pittsburgh. I'm going to show you why. So let's go to here. Sharia Tafila congregation versus Cobb. All right. Some of you guys probably remember this part. All right. It says here the Fourth Circuit syllabus, after their synagogue was painted with anti-Semitic slogans, phrases, and symbols. Remember, we just read this, right? About the hate crime laws. All right. It goes on to say petitioners brought suit in federal district court alleging that the desecration by respondents violated 42 USC 1982. The district court dismissed petitioner's claim, and the Court of Appeals affirmed, holding that discrimination against Jews is not racially discrimination under 1982. And it says held. All right. It goes on to say a charge of racial discrimination within the meaning of 1982 cannot be made out by alleging only that the defendant were motivated by racial animus. Let me read that again. It says it cannot be made out by alleging only that the defendant were motivated by racial animus. They're saying you can't just say that he was motivated by racial animus to what I want to say, now I can't think of the words, but basically mark up, damage this facility, this worship center. They say you can't just say it was racially driven. You have to give us more information. And I'm going to show you why they said that. All right. So again, cannot be made out by alleging only that the defendants were motivated by racial animus. It is also necessary to allege that the animus was directed toward the kind of group that Congress intended to protect when it passed the statute. It goes on to say, number two, it says Jews can state a 1982 claim of racial discrimination since they were among the people considered to be distinct races. And hence, within the protection of the statute at the time it was passed, they were not foreclosed from stating a cause of action simply because the defendants are also part of what is considered the Caucasian race. So what they're saying here, that guess what? We have a situation here. The Jewish community is considered by law in this country a Caucasian race. The person or the individuals that damaged their synagogue, guess what? In this court case, they are what? Caucasians. All right. So that's the dilemma. Okay. It goes on to say here, we're going to break this down. So it goes on to make reference to St. Francis College versus Al-Khazari or Kajaji or whatever. Apologies for damaging or messing up the pronunciation. But nevertheless, we go down and we see reverse and reprimanded, right? This is what was said here, right? Justice White, this is what he said. It says, delivered the opinion for a unanimous court. Justice White delivered the opinion of the court. He says this: we agree with petitioners. However, the court that the Court of Appeals erred in holding the Jews cannot state a claim against other white defendants. See, what they're saying is they both are Caucasian. They both are white. They both, according to the institution of race, guess what? The Jewish community and the people that damaged their property, right, that was committing hate crimes, they were saying that they cannot bring hate crimes against this group because they are white as well. They are Caucasians. That view rested on the notion that because Jews today are not thought to be members of a separate race, let me say that again. Jews today are not thought to be members of a separate race. They cannot make out a claim of racial discrimination. It goes on to say, within the meaning of 1982, the constitution of the section, the construction of the section we have today rejected in St. Francis College versus Al Ghazarji. All right. It goes on to say, our opinion in that case observed that definitions of race when 1982 was passed were not the same as not the same as they are today, right? But it goes on to say and concluded that to be distinct races and hence within the protection of the statute, Jews are not foreclosed from stating a cause of action against other members of what today is considered to be part of what? The Caucasian race. So even in the judicial system, the Jewish community are referred to as being what? Caucasians. They are referred to being white. That's why you will not see a racial hate crime from a white person to a Jewish person. Now, with the situation that happened in New Jersey, because if had those two perpetrators had lived, right, the Jersey City shooting, then you would have saw racial, because then you have what, according to the judicial system, you would have had a black man and a black woman shooting what, shooting up a white place of worship. So they would have had that portion of it going against them, but also what, race. But two people of the same race cannot file what, hate crimes of race against each other. All right. So I hope that makes it clear to you guys that are watching. I hope that really gives you more clarity on that. So again, that's why when you pay attention to the different situations that have happened, if you look at every situation that happened with the Jewish community, with some of the things that they had to deal with, right? For the most part, you'll see hate crimes, but you will not see hate crimes against them far as race, because for the most part, many of them are what, from within the same race. So even the governmental system tells us that the Jewish community are what, Caucasians, that they are part of what, the white race, which means now I have to ask the question, where do we get anti-Semitism? If we see Semitism, or going all the way down to Semite, mentions Hebrew, it mentions Arabic, it mentions Aramaic, it mentions Akkadian, it mentions Phoenician. So where do we get, according to the institution of race, where do we get that from? You see where I'm going at, guys? The judicial system also debunks this. It debunks, the notion, right? When we say that, when we look at the scriptures and we do the history, and everyone knows when we do the history and do the research and do the breakdowns, that the Israelites are dark melanated people. The Hebrew Israelite Messiah, dark melanated. When we look at Egypt, dark melanated. When we look at Cush, dark melanated. Libya, dark melanated. All of those are dark melanated people. That's why it wasn't hard for them to blend in with each other. That's why Joseph was viewed as being what? An Egyptian. That's why his brothers didn't recognize him. That's why when we look at Paul was mistaken for an Egyptian. The Hebrew Israelite Messiah was what? Able to hide in Egypt with his parents and all. They blended in. Moses' issue that Aaron and Aaron and Miriam rather had with Moses wasn't because of the color of the skin complexion of his wife, is because of the culture. She was a woman from Cush. So they was concerned about her culture, not her color, because all of them were dark melanated. So what happened? Miriam's punishment was what? Leprosy. That means that her skin changed colors. She lost the pigmentation of her skin. Anyway, that's what is called albinism. So let me give you, wrapping this up, key to understanding the agenda of the Jewish community, especially when we're dealing with the Zionists, right? Remember, I asked a question about um, um, Harry Truman. How come you don't see the Jewish community, as far as the ADL rather, how come we don't see them referring to Harry Truman as a racist or as a anti-Semitic? This is why, and I'm going to screen print this. Give you a more of a zoom in. This is the letter that Harry Truman signed for Israel to become a state, a national state, a new state. This is what it says. This government has been informed that a Jewish state has been proclaimed in Palestine, and recognition has been requested by the provisional government thereof. All right. It goes on to say the United States recognizes the provisional government as the de facto authority of, and notice what you see here. Guys, you got to pay attention to this. This is important. The letter that was forwarded to the president has the new Jewish state, but Truman crossed it off and wrote State of Israel. Had Truman not crossed that off, he would have been referred to, the Israel as we know today would be called the new Jewish state. That's a fact. That's why he crossed that off. But why don't you see him being referred to as anti-Semitic? Why? But again, I believe the Most High touched the heart of Harry Truman, because right now, had it not been for him to cross that off and wrote in State of Israel, that territory would be called the new Jewish state. We would not be even talking about Israel today, probably. But this is important. All right, let's wrap this up. All right. The question also is, was Israel, the territory we know now, was it their original target? That's a good question, right? Let's deal with one of the countries that the Zionists targeted to be the new Jewish state. Let's look at it. I want to take you to the Zionist Congress, the Uganda proposal. Let's deal with this here. Zionist Congress, the Uganda proposal, August 26, 1903. It says, when Theodore Herzl began his quest to establish a homeland for the Jewish people, he sought out the support of the great powers to help achieve his goal. In 1903, Herzl turned to Great Britain. See, this is why you have to understand this history here. They turned to Great Britain. Why? Because Great Britain, pretty much, when they sliced up Africa, Great Britain had authority over many of the territories, including, as we see here, Uganda. So Herzl turned to Great Britain and met with Joseph Chamberlain, the British colonial secretary, and other high-ranking officials who agreed in principle to Jewish settlements in East Africa. Notice East Africa, right? Jewish settlements in East Africa. At the Sixth Zionist Congress at Basel on August 26, 1903, Herzl proposed the British Uganda programs as a temporary refuge for Jews in Russia and in immediate danger. By a vote of 295 to 178, it was decided to send an expedition, in other words, an investigatory commission to examine the territory proposed. 3 days later, the Uganda program was finally rejected by the Zionist movement at the Seventh Zionist Congress in 1905. But Nahum Sirkin and Israel Zangwill called an alternative conference to continue the plan of the Uganda scheme. The fortunes of the territorialist movement depended to no small degree on the seriousness of anti-Semitism. Right, one of the hand, excuse me, on the one hand, and failure of the political dimension of Zionist activity on the other. So, for example, the movement ranks swelled somewhat following the pogroms in 1905, but declined considerably after the securing of the Balfour Declaration. All right. So that Balfour Declaration, they decided to what? Shift their attention. Right. So it goes on to say Zangwill became the movement's undisputed leader after the rejection of the Uganda scheme on the grounds of impracticability by the British. Zangwill turned his attention to settlement in Canada and Australia, but opposition from local residents led him to abandon the scheme. Expeditions were sent to Mesopotamia, in other words, Iraq, Serenica, which is Libya, Angola, but little came of these expeditions. A project had, a project that had some concrete success was the Galveston scheme, which contemplated the settlement of Jews in the in the American Southwest, in particular in Texas. All right. So you see the gist of it here. Just reading a little bit more. Received the assistance of Jacob Schiff, the American Jewish banker, and some 9,300 Jews arrived in that area between 1907 and 1914 through the Immigration Bureau of the Territorialist Organization. All right. So I gave you a lot of information, and I just wanted to really give you an understanding of the history, but also giving you an understanding of what Semitic is, Semite, anti-Semitism, and I want to show you by using my DNA results and using some other references to show you that we are Semitic people. We are Semitic people. All right. We are Semitic people. I know I went in geek mode, Sister E. All right. What Sister E say here in geek mode? All right. So I'm going to stop right here. All right. I'm coming out of geek mode now. All right. So I wanted to show you guys again what I gave you references. I guarantee you, if you take the resources, the references that I gave you, and you write this down, I guarantee you that this will make a world of a difference. I guarantee you it'll be hard for them to defend this. It'll really be hard for them to defend this. So I hope this helps you. Let's see here. What's the question here? All right. All right. Thank you, Sister E. Appreciate it. Let's see. I thought I saw another comment here. All right. All right, let's see what someone said here. But anti Semitic still doesn't mean anti Black, since the context in which the word is used today matters. And that's what makes this word one of those words of confusion to Skyman, is because the way that it's being explained, right? When we understand, and I encourage you, if you haven't seen the beginning of the presentation, go back and review the beginning of the presentation, because I break down each one of the words so you understand. And I'll just bring it up real quick since you're here. But I encourage you, go back and review the presentation. Let me take your comments down here. All right, let me take your comments here. Now let me go to here real quick. No, I'm not gonna go through it. Just look at the video, because I don't want to take a lot more time. Going over that presentation. But I encourage you, go back over, watch the presentation, and you'll see some of the things that I pointed out All right, let's see here. I see another one here. Our DNA is Semitic, right? Y DNA, E is brother to Y DNA. So yeah, next this weekend I'll pull some of the information out. So when you start understanding, like for example, the E, right? The E um, represents the territory of, let's just say, the Northeast Africa, which is also referred to the Middle East. So we know that E is what is considered or what is called a Y mutation. So anyone that shares that similar mutation, they put a letter over it. So when you see E1B1A versus E1B1B, right? That just tells us that what we are in the same region, but that B versus A tells us what a difference between um, a further mutation of the Y chromosome. All right. So when we start dealing with um, Semitic, generally they put those under that particular group. But I'm going to give you some information next time we come. I didn't think about it. I would have had it in this presentation that actually breaks down in this presentation, really shows you the landscaping of each letter. So definitely appreciate you. All right. So let's see. Yeah, I'm not going to get into all that. A and B is Esau. One thing we do know that they were born of the same father. When we really understand that, they had the same Y chromosome. Matter of fact, I could really correct that. When you understand the Y chromosome and how it mutates, right? You're not going to have two separate mutations coming out of the same father. And that's what I taught in the first presentation. I encourage you to watch it when I explained the Conan rather, the Konim or Kohanim rather, um, you know, test that they put together. And I showed and I proved that you cannot have two separate Y mutations from the same person. All right. So when we understand that, that means that guess what? Um, Jacob sons, all 12 of them had the same mutation, the Y mutation. So again, so Jacob and Esau did not have two separate mutations. So I just want to point that out. All right. Let me take this down here. Okay. Any other questions? Thank you, Sister Tammy, for watching the presentation. Appreciate you. Appreciate you, Sister Carol, for watching the presentation. Anyone else as we get ready to wrap up? Have any comments that you'd like to share? But again, we're gonna go deeper with this information. I'm gonna go further in some other information that I'm gonna bring forth to you. I'm gonna do a presentation called Identity Theft, right? The system to destroy our hope. And in there, I'm gonna give you proper clarity on the church in Savannah, Georgia, that some people decided that they want to bang against. I'm going to give you clarity about give you some references of how to what articulate who we are with primary sources. All right. So let's see what else we have here. Um, let's see here. All right. I would like to come on live with you, brother, to share some info. Yeah, just reach out to me offline, shoot me an email, and we'll make it happen. I don't have a problem with doing that. I appreciate you with Moray, Rabbi Ricky Stansbury for pressing out. So anyone else, any other comments or questions? But again, just continue to um, pray for me, pray for our ministry, because when you doing this type of teaching, people are really looking to demonize you and tear you down, because this is not the popular information that they want to hear. This type of information is taking people out of their comfort zone. And it's hard to come against what I just shared. If you notice, I did not utilize the typical books that many will use. I didn't revert to or resort to the 13 tribes and all those. I stayed within a certain area that will be hard to debunk. It's hard to debunk the Supreme Court. All right. It's hard to debunk those things. All right. I want to say peace and blessings to Sister Patricia. Appreciate you guys. Appreciate you for following me and supporting me over the years. Really appreciate you. All right. So, with that being said, family, I really appreciate you guys for tuning in tonight. I apologize for all the issues that we had tonight. And again, I have to blame someone. So, I'm going to blame Sister E. And matter of fact, I'm going to blame Sister Rochelle. I got to blame somebody, right? So, but I love you guys. Appreciate it. If you have any questions or if you have a certain discussion that you want me to teach on, feel free to post it. But got a lot of catching up because a lot of my presentations were taken down by Facebook. So I'm doing a lot of catching up. So again, I really appreciate you guys and appreciate you, Shawnee. Thank you again as well. Appreciate you jumping in. But nevertheless, guys, really appreciate you. Jacob, Trinitel, appreciate you as well. Again, family, we could do it better together. And again, I want to encourage you guys, change your registration, non-affiliate, change your registration. That is the push that we're pushing among our community. My concern is not whether or not you vote right now. My concern is not allowing these political parties continue to take our community for granted. So pull out of these different parties, make them work, make them come to us. We have to be in front of our narrative. We cannot continue to let these politicians and other communities hijack what we know is the issues in our community and our concerns. So with that being said, love you, family, and I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. And really appreciate you guys. Have a blessed night, and we'll be back on this weekend. All right. Shalom.